You don't have a broken mind, you have a sleeping mind. For years, they made you believe that your mind was weak, that it needed constant training, techniques, formulas, and steps to become strong. But the truth is that your mind was never broken. It was just asleep like a closed chest waiting for the right key. And here's the secret no one told you. What we call hidden power is not a superpower for a few enlightened ones. It's in everyone. You felt it in flashes when a brilliant idea suddenly appeared, when a dream revealed an impossible answer, or when, facing a limit that seemed unbreakable, you discovered strengths you didn't even know you had. That wasn't coincidence. It was your mind showing you for an instant what it can do when it awakens. What we'll do on this journey is not give you new powers. It's to return the key to the ones that were always yours. You're going to discover that your mind is not just thought, it's symbol, emotion, body, energetic field. And above all, you're going to live an awakening, a mental rebirth in which you'll stop using barely a spark of your fire to ignite the complete bonfire. Prepare yourself, because when you finish this path, you'll no longer look at your mind as a tool, but as an entire universe, a universe that until now had remained hidden. Chapter 1. The Fire of Wonder. Most people believe that awakening the mind is a matter of accumulating more information, of learning new techniques, of memorizing formulas to be more productive. But the truth is that the first awakening doesn't have to do with knowing more, but with feeling again what you forgot. Wonder. Wonder is the fire that ignites the spark of the sleeping mind. Think about it. When you were a child, everything amazed you. An insect, a drop of water, a shadow on the wall, and in that state your mind was open, vibrant, awake. There were no limits in your imagination nor barriers in your curiosity. What happened after? They educated you to stop being amazed, to live in the obvious, to call the extraordinary normal. And little by little, your mind entered a deep sleep. Scientists have discovered something incredible. Wonder literally changes your brain. Andrew Newberg, neurologist, studied how the sensation of marvel activates zones that usually remain off. Wonder is not just emotion, it's a neurological key that awakens dormant networks. That's why an experience of wonder can change the course of your life in an instant. Let me tell you a story. A man passed every day through the same path to work, gray, repetitive, automatic, until one day, without knowing why, he looked up and saw a sunrise that left him breathless. He stood still, and in that instant, something broke inside his routine. That simple act of looking at what had always been there pulled him out of autopilot. It made him make the decision to change his job, to dare to write a book he'd been postponing for years, a sunrise, nothing more. But in his mind, it was an awakening. Why? Because wonder breaks the spell of the everyday. It tears you from the fog of "I already know" and places you in the fertile ground of "what if." And there, in that opening, true mental expansion is born. Spiritual traditions always knew it. Jesus said, "Unless you become like children, you will not enter the kingdom." He wasn't talking about naivety, he was talking about the mental state of wonder, of a clean look, fresh, capable of seeing the divine in the simple. The mystics knew that wonder opens the doors of the invisible, and today, science confirms it. The question is, how to awaken that fire in your life? Now, you don't have to climb mountains or travel to the desert. It's enough to stop, look with other eyes at what you already have in front of you, observe the details you ignored, hear a sound as if it were the first time. In those small acts, your mind ignites, your neurons awaken, your energy expands. Today, I want to invite you to practice it. Choose something every day, your breathing, the sky, a tree, even your own hand. Look at it as if you'd never seen it before. Without taking it for granted, without passing by, let yourself be amazed, because wonder is not naivety, it's the spark that ignites the awakening. When you recover that capacity, your mind stops being a repeated file and begins to be an expanding universe. The first awakening is always this, igniting the fire of wonder. In the next chapter, you'll discover that the mind also awakens when it dares to look at the impossible head-on, and that the limits that seem unbreakable are not walls, they're disguised doors. Chapter 2. The door of the impossible. The second awakening of the mind occurs when you dare to look at the impossible head-on, because the impossible is not a wall, it's a disguised door. Since childhood, they taught us to fear that word, impossible. They told us it was the limit, that it couldn't be crossed, that their reason ended and madness began. But what they never told us is that the minds that truly awakened were those that walked directly toward that threshold. Imagine someone like Roger Bannister, the first man to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. For decades, doctors and trainers assured it was physically impossible. They said the human heart wouldn't withstand it. But one day Bannister decided not to accept that idea as destiny, and he did it. What happened after? In less than a year, more than 20 runners broke the same mark. What changed? Human physiology. No, what changed was the mind. The impossible opened like a door, and others awakened upon seeing that it could be done. The mind ignites when it touches a limit and dares to cross it, because the impossible doesn't exist in matter, it exists in perception. It's a mental lock. And when you break it, not only do you awaken everyone around you. Spiritual traditions expressed it with symbols. Moses crossing the sea, Jesus walking on water, yogis levitating in deep meditation state. It doesn't matter if you take it as history or metaphor, all those accounts point to the same thing. When you touch the impossible, the mind abandons its known limits and opens to another reality. Science also confirms it. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who studied the flow state, demonstrated that when a person faces a challenge that seems impossible but tries it with full concentration, the mind activates hidden resources, new connections, and energy that wasn't available before, as if the pressure of the impossible released the true dormant potential. Think about your own life. What impossible have you bought without questioning it? Maybe the idea that you can't change careers because it's too late, or that you'll never have abundance because you were born without opportunities, or that you can't heal because your family was always like that. All those impossibles are not walls, they're doors waiting for you to approach them. The key is not in defeating them all at once, but in taking the first step toward them. When you do it, something breaks in your mind. A neural network ignites, and energy is released, and awakening begins. Today I want to invite you to choose a personal impossible. Write it down, look at it head on, and dare to take the first movement toward it. No matter how small, a call, a search, a gesture, that step will be the signal your mind needs to awaken another part of its fire. Because the impossible is not an end, it's an invitation. And when you dare to cross it, you discover that the door was never closed, it was just waiting for you to touch it. In the next chapter, you're going to discover that the mind doesn't speak only with thoughts but with symbols, that each dream, each metaphor, and each hidden image is a secret code that can awaken another part of your power. Chapter 3. The Secret Language of Symbols. The mind doesn't think only with words, it thinks with symbols. And that is one of the most powerful awakenings, understanding that what your mind wants to tell you often doesn't appear in phrases, but in images, in dreams, in signs that seem casual, but that in reality are codes. The ancients knew it. That's why they spoke in parables, in myths, in metaphors. Because they knew that the deep mind doesn't awaken with logic, it awakens with symbols that go directly to the heart. Think about a dream. Maybe you dreamed of flying, of falling, of getting lost in an unknown city. And upon waking you thought it was absurd, but it wasn't. It was your mind speaking to you in the language it understands best. Images. Flying is not just flying, it's freedom, it's desire for expansion. Falling is not just falling, it's fear of losing control. Dreams are not absurd, they're encrypted letters from your sleeping mind. Carl Jung explained it clearly. Symbols are keys, and every time you interpret them, you access a deeper layer of yourself. It doesn't matter if they're dreams, if they're repeated coincidences, or if they're archetypes that appear in your life again and again. Each symbol is a reminder that the mind has a secret way of speaking. Let me tell you something. A woman came to me saying she always dreamed of a snake. She was afraid. She thought it was something bad, but upon exploring more, she understood it wasn't a threat, it was transformation. The snake sheds its skin, leaves the old, is reborn. And right in her life, she was at that point. A relationship that had to end, a job that no longer nourished her. That symbol gave her the strength that words couldn't, and by following it, her life changed. That's the power of symbols. They show you what your conscious mind doesn't dare to say. They shake you with images that awaken dormant parts of you. And what does this mean for you? That every time a symbol repeats in your life, don't ignore it. Don't call it coincidence, observe it. Ask yourself what it wants to tell you, because that's your unconscious trying to wake you up. The logical mind analyzes, but the awakened mind interprets. And there's the difference between living on the surface or accessing the bottom of the ocean. Today, I want to invite you to an exercise. Think about the symbol that repeats most in your life. It can be an animal, a place, an object, an image that appears in dreams or even in your day-to-day. Write it down, look at it calmly, ask it, what part of me do you represent? And listen, maybe you'll discover that within that symbol, there's a message that can move your entire life. Because awakening the power of your mind is not just thinking differently. It's learning to read the secret language that always spoke to you, even though you didn't understand it. And in the next chapter, you're going to discover that your mind is not locked in your skull, that it also thinks and feels through your body, that each organ, each physical emotion, each breath is an access door to an even deeper awakening. Chapter 4. The Body as Oracle. They taught us to believe that the mind is in the head, that thinking is a cerebral act, that everything else is just body. But that is one of the biggest illusions we've bought. Your mind is not locked in your skull. Your mind also inhabits your skin, your stomach, your breathing, your heart. And each of those parts has a way of speaking that, if you know how to listen, becomes an oracle. Neuroscience has already confirmed it. They speak of the second brain in the intestine, a network of neurons capable of deciding before your reason does. Hasn't it happened to you that you had a bad feeling in your stomach, or that you felt butterflies in your chest before an important decision? That wasn't metaphor. It was your body thinking. It was your hidden mind trying to wake you up. The ancients knew it without laboratories. That's why yogis paid so much attention to breathing. That's why shamans listened to the tremors of the body during rituals, because they understood that the body is a map, and each symptom, each tension, each impulse is a phrase written in that secret language. I once knew a man who suffered constant pain in his lower back. Doctors found no explanation, but upon investigating further, we discovered he'd been carrying unresolved guilt for years, a story he'd never dared to tell. His body wasn't sick, his body was speaking, and when he finally released that confession, the pain vanished like smoke. Your body is an oracle because it always tells the truth. Even if your conscious mind lies, even if you try to convince yourself that everything is fine, the body doesn't play at disguising. If there's fear, it trembles. If there's rage, it tenses. If there's sadness, it shrinks. And if there's expansion, it opens as if it were light. Listening to the body is an awakening because it forces you to leave the illusion of control. It forces you to look at what you're really vibrating, not what you think you're thinking. I invite you to an exercise. The next time you feel a symptom, a tension, a discomfort, don't ignore it or cover it up. Sit in silence and ask that part of your body, what do you want me to understand? Then breathe and listen. Maybe you won't receive a phrase. Maybe a memory will appear, an emotion, an image. That's the oracle speaking. When you learn to listen like this, your body stops being an enemy and becomes your most honest ally. Your mind awakens when you recognize that it's beating in every corner of your biology. And in the next chapter, you'll delve into one of the most feared terrains, darkness. Because you'll discover that the true awakening of the mind doesn't happen running toward the light, but daring to descend into what you always avoided looking at. Chapter 5. Darkness as Teacher. They trained us to flee from darkness, to avoid pain, fears, doubts, as if everything dark were an enemy. But the fifth awakening of the mind occurs when you realize something radical. Darkness doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to teach you. Carl Jung called it the shadow. That set of emotions, desires, and memories we hide because they don't fit with the image we want to show. But the more we hide them, the more strength they take in the unconscious, until one day they burst in the form of fear, sabotage, or illness. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's the key. Awakening your mind is not fleeing from the shadow, it's entering it with a lit lamp. Look at the story of Siddhartha Gautama before becoming Buddha. He didn't awaken only with beautiful meditations, but confronting his internal demons under the Bodhi tree. Temptations, fears, doubts. Everything appeared that night, and it was by going through that darkness that he reached illumination. The same pattern appears in almost all great spiritual awakenings. First, the descent, then the light. Modern neuroscience also backs it up. Joseph Ledoux, specialist in neurobiology of fear, discovered that when we consciously confront our dark emotions, the brain can reconfigure itself. What seemed like a fixed trauma can become learning. Darkness literally reorganizes your mind if you dare to enter it. A woman came to me saying that every time she was about to succeed at something, she ruined it without knowing why. That was her self-sabotage pattern. Looking deeper, the shadow appeared. As a child, she heard so many times that rich people are bad, that as an adult, she unconsciously stopped herself before having abundance. It wasn't bad luck. It was a hidden program, a shadow that needed to be seen. And when she confronted it, that pattern began to dissolve. Your darkness is like a closed vault, and inside it there's trapped energy, internal gold that only releases if you dare to open it. Nietzsche said it with brutal clarity. Whoever fights with monsters should see to it that in the process he doesn't become a monster himself. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. It's not a warning of fear, it's a powerful truth. When you look at your abyss, you discover the strength to hold your own gaze. Today, I invite you to an exercise. Think about what you most avoid looking at. A fear, a memory, a forbidden desire. Write it on a sheet without judging it. Just look at it. Observe it as if it were a creature that comes to show you something. Ask it what energy you hide behind you. If you do it honestly, you'll feel that beneath fear there's power, beneath rage there's fire, beneath sadness there's sensitivity. Darkness becomes teacher when you stop fleeing from it. The true awakening of the mind occurs when you understand that you don't need more light. You need the courage to enter your own night, because there, in that depth, are the pieces that complete your power. And in the next chapter, you'll discover that you can not only awaken by facing the shadow, you can also do it by facing another illusion, that of time. Because the mind doesn't awaken in the human clock, it awakens in the eternal present, where everything happens at once. Chapter 6. Inverted time. The sleeping mind lives enslaved to the clock, runs behind the hour, anguishes over what happened and wears itself out over what hasn't arrived yet. That invisible prison is what makes most never awaken. Because while your attention is trapped in a past you can't change, and in a future that doesn't yet exist, you miss the only place where your mind can awaken, the now. St. Augustine explained it masterfully in his Confessions. Time is not the past that no longer exists, nor the future that isn't yet. Time is a present that stretches. Einstein confirmed it centuries later. Linear time is only a perception. In reality, everything happens in a simultaneous field. What we call time is a construction of the mind to organize experience, but it's not the ultimate truth. Eckhart Tolle translated it into simple language in The Power of Now. The mind awakens when you leave the mental noise. It lives projecting, and you install yourself in the present instant, naked, vibrant, eternal. And it's not theory. Studies in neuroscience show that when someone manages to focus fully on the present through meditation or flow, the prefrontal cortex reorganizes and the perception of time changes. In that state, a minute can feel like an eternity and an hour like an instant. I remember a businessman who came to me exhausted. He had money, he had success, but he had no peace. "I always feel like I'm running late," he told me. Observing his life, I saw he was trapped in the illusion of linear time. He lived according to what was missing, never in what was. I proposed something simple to him. Before each meeting, close your eyes, breathe 3 times, and ask yourself, what is here right now? At first, he resisted. I'm wasting time, he said. But little by little, he discovered that by entering the present, his mind became clearer, his decisions firmer, and paradoxically, he gained time instead of losing it. The paradox of awakening is this: the more you run after time, the more it escapes you. But when you release it and install yourself in the present instant, time folds and becomes your ally. It's like a river. If you try to catch it with your hands, it slips away. But if you learn to flow with it, it carries you effortlessly. The Bible expresses it in a powerful phrase: 1,000 years are as a day, and a day as 1,000 years. 2 Peter 3:8. That verse is not poetry, it's spiritual science. When your mind awakens, the linear perception of time collapses and you enter another dimension, the eternity of the instant. Today you can start simply. Stop for a moment, breathe, and observe something small: the sound of your breathing, the texture of your skin, the beating in your chest. That instant, so simple, is the portal. It's the key that opens the door to awakening. And if you practice it often, you'll discover that you don't need to control time, you need to inhabit it. And when you inhabit it, it stops being an enemy and becomes a field. The 6th awakening of the mind is this: leaving the prison of the clock and entering the eternal present, where your power is already complete and nothing is lacking. In the next chapter, you'll discover an even more disconcerting secret: that the mind doesn't expand with control, but with surrender. Because what we call letting go is not defeat, it's the trick of the great mystics and scientists, the moment when they stopped pushing and began to receive. Chapter 7. The Art of Surrender. The sleeping mind believes that control is power, that the more it plans, the more it forces, the more it watches, the closer it will be to getting what it desires. But in reality, the opposite occurs. The more you squeeze, the more it escapes. The more you chase, the more it moves away. Because the mind doesn't awaken in control, it awakens in surrender. Jesus taught it with a phrase that bewilders those who still live trapped in the logic of effort. Whoever loses his life will find it. That doesn't mean abandonment or defeat. It means delivery. It means to stop fighting against the current and begin to flow with the intelligence of the river. Einstein confessed that his great discoveries were not born at his work table, but in the moments when he let his mind free, walking, dreaming, even playing the violin. Nikola Tesla assured that his inventions appeared complete in his mind, as if someone had deposited them there. What did they have in common? Surrender. They knew that constant control closes the door and that letting go opens the channel. In the mystical tradition, surrender was always seen as a supreme art. Yogis speak of Ishvara Pranidhana, total delivery to the divine principle. Sufis dance in circles not to control, but to lose themselves in the eternal. St. John of the Cross expressed it like this: to come to taste everything, don't want to have taste in anything. What seems empty to the controlling mind is fullness to the awakened mind. I remember a woman who came to me seeking answers. She'd spent years trying to manifest a love relationship, but the more she tried, the more failure she found. She'd tried affirmations, techniques, courses. Nothing seemed to work. Until one day, exhausted, she told me, "I can't anymore. If it's not for me, I let it go." That was the moment, not abandonment, but surrender. 2 months later, she met someone, not because they magically appeared, but because by letting go, her energy stopped pushing and began to attract. Neuroscience today confirms what mystics knew. When we try to force a solution, we activate the stress networks in the brain. But when we let go, the default mode network enters into action, connecting ideas that seemed impossible. That's why the best answers appear in the shower, in rest, in the moment when you're no longer controlling. Surrendering is not surrendering to defeat. It's surrendering to a greater intelligence, to the invisible field that already knows the way. It's recognizing that your conscious mind is barely a flashlight, while the entire universe is the sun. Today, you can practice it in the small things. Release control of a conversation and truly listen. Release control of an outcome and deliver it to the process. Release control of your breathing and let it flow without intervening. And you'll see that in that letting go, something adjusts on its own. The seventh awakening of the mind is this: to stop fragmenting in the obsession of control and expand in the art of surrender. Because what you seek doesn't arrive when you push it, it arrives when you allow it. In the next chapter, you'll discover another even more potent awakening, that words are not simple sounds, but vibrational keys. You'll learn that it's not about repeating empty phrases, but about charging your words with intention and emotion, because when you speak from the deep mind, reality cannot ignore you. Chapter 8. The Alchemy of the Word. Words are more than sounds, they're seeds, and every time you speak, you're sowing in the invisible field that sustains your life. Most don't know it. They believe speaking is only describing, but in reality, speaking is decreeing. And that's why the eighth awakening of the mind is this: understanding that it's not about repeating empty phrases, but about converting the word into living alchemy. In Genesis, a simple but unbreakable formula is repeated. And God said, and it was done. The mystery is there. The word as a bridge between the invisible and the visible, not as a tale of ancient magic, but as a universal teaching. What you name takes form. What you sustain in vibration organizes itself in matter. The ancients knew this. The Egyptians called the word Heka, creative power. The Mayans saw in the verb the tool to order reality. Christian mystics spoke of the Logos, the eternal word that sustains everything that exists. And even today, science begins to approach. Masaru Emoto's experiments showed how words charged with intention transform the structure of water. And if our body is 70% water, what do you think happens every time you speak of yourself with harshness or with love? A woman told me that every morning when looking in the mirror, the first thing she said was, "I'm tired. I'm always tired." She wasn't conscious, but those words had become a decree. Her body obeyed, her energy turned off, her day was already marked, until she began to change the script, not with unreal phrases, not with empty promises, but with words charged with real intention. She began to tell herself, "Today I allow myself to be light," and little by little her biology, her mood, and even her circumstances began to reflect that new sowing. The sorcerer of the word doesn't repeat for the sake of repeating. It's not about saying, "I am abundant," while inside you feel fear. It's about inhabiting what you say, about filling each syllable with emotion, about speaking from the deep mind. Neville Goddard explained it clearly. It's not enough to affirm. You have to feel as true what you affirm. Because the universe doesn't respond to noise, it responds to the vibration you load in that noise. In Sufism, the dervishes spin pronouncing sacred remembrances, not as an empty prayer, but as a vibration that permeates the entire body. In Kabbalah, Hebrew letters were seen as cosmic forces, not as simple symbols. And in primitive Christianity, it was taught that each word pronounced with faith was a direct bridge to the kingdom. See? In all traditions, there's an echo. The word is not an ornament, it's living energy in movement. Today, neuroscience confirms it from another angle. The brain doesn't distinguish between the real and the repeated with emotion. When you say a phrase loaded with images and feelings, you activate the same neural areas as if you were already living it. That means every word said with presence is a vibrational rehearsal that prepares your field to receive what you name. Try it tonight before sleeping. Don't repeat a mantra like a parrot. Choose a simple phrase, but charged. Sow with intention. Tomorrow I wake up with clarity. My life is an open space for abundance. I am worthy of receiving. But say it with your whole body, with the emotion of someone who already inhabits it, with the certainty that each syllable is a seed. And observe how your energy begins to align, because the sleeping mind speaks without realizing, and each unconscious word is an order to the field. But the awakened mind converts the word into alchemy. It doesn't say what it feels now, it says what the soul already is, and the world obeys. In the next chapter, you'll discover something even more powerful, that a single word charged with intention can move mountains, but a single instant of absolute presence can transform your entire life. You're going to learn how to enter states of hyper-presence and why a second of total attention is worth more than an entire year of distraction. Chapter 9. The Power of Extreme Presence. Most people live with a divided mind. One part in the past remembering what can no longer be changed, another in the future, worrying about what hasn't occurred yet, and barely a spark in the present, the only real thing that exists. This is how energy is wasted, dispersed, fragmented, without direction. But there are rare, almost miraculous moments in which everything disappears and only the instant remains. When you enter what athletes call the zone, mystics call samadhi, and modern science describes as flow state. Kobe Bryant said it once in an interview. When I'm in the zone, there's no noise, there's no time. Everything slows down, the hoop becomes giant, and I know I'm not going to miss. That's the power of extreme presence, not thinking about what will happen if you score or if you fail, not thinking about the scoreboard or the criticism, just being so here that the entire universe seems to align with you. Neuroscience confirms it. In flow states, the brain temporarily turns off the prefrontal cortex, the part that doubts, that calculates, that judges. And then the energy concentrates in a single channel, like a laser instead of a flashlight. Total attention expands perception, memory sharpens, creativity explodes, and the impossible becomes natural. Zen monks knew it long before. They did calligraphy, not to write, but to train presence. A single stroke could take hours, not because they stopped, but because each movement was impregnated with totality. There was no separation between the hand, the brush, the paper, and the universe. Everything was a single act of extreme presence. Has it happened to you that in a deep conversation you forget time? That in the middle of a song or a dance you felt there was nothing more than that instant? That was a flash of hyper-presence. It wasn't coincidence. It was your mind awakening to what it can do when it stops dividing itself and concentrates all in the now. The mistake of many seekers is wanting to control the mind to get there, but extreme presence is not achieved with control. It's achieved with immersion, with total delivery to the instant. Michael Jordan described it as being in the moment more than anyone, and meditators describe it as being breath, not observing it. Today, science calls it mindfulness, but that term falls short because it's not just full attention, it's full energy. It's bringing each cell, each emotion, each fragment of your being to a single point of focus. When you achieve it, time dilutes, doubt turns off, fear disappears, and what remains is pure power. Try it right now. Choose an object in front of you. Don't look at it as always. Look at it as if it were the first time in your life you're seeing it, as if the entire universe depended on that instant. Feel the weight, the texture, the color, the energy it emits. If you hold it for more than a few seconds, you'll notice that your mind stops wandering, that you enter a strange but powerful silence. That's the door. That's the beginning of extreme presence. And don't think you have to live all day like this. Seconds are enough, instants, because a single moment of total attention can transform your energy more than a year of distraction. Those instants are cumulative. Every time you choose to be completely present, your field reorganizes, your mind awakens a little more, and your life begins to reflect it. The sleeping mind runs in 1,000 directions and never arrives. The awakened mind enters extreme presence and discovers that everything it was seeking was already here. In the next chapter, we arrive at the closing of this journey. You're going to discover that the true awakening of the mind doesn't consist of adding more layers, more techniques, or more information, but in letting go of what's left over, in removing the veils, in being mentally reborn until your mind stops being a prison and becomes a temple. Chapter 10. The Mental Rebirth. Awakening the mind is not accumulating, it's letting go. It's not adding new powers, but removing the veils that made you forget what was always there. And now, after this path, you can no longer look at your mind as before, because you discovered it wasn't a chaotic enemy or a broken machine. It was a sleeping giant waiting for you to call it to life. You learned that the mind is not just thought, it's intuition, emotion, body, energetic field, that your true compass is in the invisible, that imagination is not fantasy, It's the language of creation, that silence opens doors that noise can never force, that surrender connects you with a greater intelligence, that your words are decrees, and that a second of extreme presence is worth more than years of distraction. Each chapter was not an isolated lesson, it was a brick in the construction of your mental rebirth. Because now, you know what? You're not a victim of your thoughts, you're the architect of your mental field. You don't need to control everything. It's enough to open space and let go. You don't need to repeat empty phrases. You need to inhabit your words with truth. You don't need to wait years of effort, because transformation can be born in an instant of total consciousness. That's the awakening. To stop walking blindly with a turned-off flashlight and ignite the complete bonfire of your mind. Imagine it for a moment. A life in which you no longer react by habit, but choose with clarity. A life in which your thoughts stop being noise and become allies. A life in which each emotion is available energy instead of burden. A life in which your word opens paths, your attention creates realities, and your silence organizes your universe. That's not a distant ideal. It's what happens when your mind stops sleeping. Today you've been mentally reborn, not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer the same person who began this journey. Now you have the key to awaken, to choose, to create. And here's the most important thing. This awakening doesn't end on the last page, it begins now. Each decision, each word, each instant of presence is the opportunity to ignite your real power. You already know it. Your mind wasn't weak, it was just asleep. And now it is awakened. If this journey ignited something in you, I want to invite you to keep exploring more paths. On this channel, you'll find other audiobooks that intertwine with what you just lived, like The Path of the Sorcerer or The 7 Hidden Codes of Hermes. Each one of them is another key, another door toward your expansion. Subscribe to this channel and join a community of seekers who are awakening their true mental power. Hit that subscribe button, activate the notification bell so you don't miss any new journey, and leave a comment sharing what this awakening moved in you. Your transformation begins now, and together we can keep lighting more fires. See you in the next awakening.